Validation. What's the purpose of validating the requirements? Chapter 7.3 is to ensure that all requirements and designs align to the business requirements and to the strategy, basically, or are feeding into the solution that we're thinking about, or kind of like are aligned with the vision of the company, whatever the fuck we're doing, right? To support the delivery of needed value. And what's a description? Requirements validation is an ongoing process to ensure that stakeholder solution transition requirements align to the business requirements that designs satisfy the requirements. I don't like the fact that they mention requirements a lot, but ultimately they're using this term specifically because it's neutral. Because every time you're approaching a project, you're going to be asking, what am I supposed to do? What did I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Whatever. Understanding what the desired future state looks like for the stakeholders allows you to kind of like validate differently, understanding where they're coming from, earlier problems, understanding the stakeholders' issues, all of that. So inputs, what are the inputs? Specified and modeled requirements and the verified. Well, the verified requirements is not necessarily directly contributing to the validation. Some pieces of it are because they kind of explain things, but you're still only explaining the presentation. That's in the verification. So validation, you're just validating the actual work, the actual like data, the actual like shit. The validation activities cannot be completed before requirements are completely verified. Funny, right? Because you have to verify it before you actually validate it, but the verification is more towards the presentation and are we still moving in the right direction? So anyways, what are the guidelines and tools for 7.3? Business objectives, future state description, makes sense, potential value and solution scope. Exactly. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How do we want this to look like in the future? What's the value perceived from moving forward with this? And the scope of the solution. Is it still within the realm of our expectations? And the output gives us a validated requirements, which we would actually use while defining the design options and measuring solution performances. Measuring solution performances might actually be some KPIs in the future. Who the fuck knows? So what are the elements? You identify the assumptions. Amazing. If an organization is launching an unprecedented product or service, it may be necessary to make assumptions about customer or stakeholder response, as there are no similar previous experiences on which to rely. In other cases, it may be difficult or impossible to prove that a particular problem derives from an identified root cause. Stakeholders may have assumed that certain benefits will result from the implementation of the requirement. These assumptions are identified and defined so that associated risks can be managed. I think there's a beauty in this because effectively, what we did before is we kind of like taking you through the steps. We basically we did the planning and monitoring stage, and then we did the elicitation and collaboration stage, and then basically we kind of decided on how we're going to manage the life cycle of the requirements. And the life cycle is basically tracing them, maintaining them, and prioritizing requirements. And we're kind of like we created a structure on how to organize basically our movement forward when it comes to like what we're doing and how we're managing. And then a part of it is also strategy analysis, where we kind of like decide we're looking at where we are right now, where we want to be, assess the risk and the change that needs to happen. So right now, in a way, what we did is we took the requirements and basically the summary of all that we've been working on, and we cleaned them a bit. We modeled them. And then after we modeled them, we verified that the model works and that people can understand what we're doing. So the validation is basically gives us the chance to be like, no, okay, so like now that everything is cleaner and simpler and straight to the point, which is basically a this what's it called? What's it called? What's it called? Dissolved. What's it called? There's a word I'm looking for. One second. I wrote it yesterday somewhere. You decomposed. It's the it's the whole lot of information kind of like refactored. Let's say refactored into smaller bits and pieces and designed in a way that people could easily like follow up with us and understand us. So that's the identification of the assumptions, right? Like these are the elements of validation. Other elements of validation are defining measurable evaluation criteria, as in like while the expected defining define measurable evaluation criteria is basically in order for us to validate properly, we have to compare, evaluate, structure, point, kind of like make that decision and be like this and this and this and this and this. So you have to separate between the relevance and find a way to quantify them and see how like this matters more than this or whatever. So business analysts define the evaluation criteria that will be used to evaluate how successful the change has been after the solution is implemented. This is basically something that we do. Target metrics can be developed, right? So evaluate alignment with solution scope as well. Requirement can be a benefit to stakeholder and still not be desirable part of a solution. A requirement that does not deliver benefit to the stakeholder is a strong candidate for elimination. So in a way, you have to prioritize. Like, you know, if it benefits the stakeholder, doesn't necessarily believe benefit like the entire solution. But if it doesn't benefit the stakeholder and benefits the solution, that might be a bigger problem. So those kind of like have to be the things that you're evaluating as well, like and figure out a way to evaluate them. And either a future state must be reevaluated or the scope or the solution scope changed, or the requirements removed from the solution scope itself. Because ultimately, sometimes we just add things and that's basically overkill, and sometimes we do too much and sometimes we do too little. I have no fucking idea. Every project literally is its own fucking beast, and it's up for us to be like masters and shit like this. If a design cannot be validated to support a requirement, there might be a missing or misunderstood requirement, or the design must change. So I think this part is crucial because like we move forward or we don't. And if we move forward, how do we move forward? And it's an assessment of how you're doing. What are your guidelines and tools? The business objective, naturally, the future state description, naturally, the potential value and the solution scope. All of these are in the strategy, by the way, right? All of these are basically what we did in strategy analysis, where we're looking right now where we are, where we want to go, what is the objective we're working with, and ultimately the value that we're getting out of it. And well, we're supposed, through the validation, we're supposed to kind of create the metrics needed, right? Like, you know, help ensure the requirements that are part of the solution scope to help activate the desired future state can be used as a benchmark against the value which delivered requirements, blah, blah, blah. So, and the techniques, acceptance, and evaluation criteria used to define the quality metrics that must be met to achieve acceptance by stakeholders. Yeah, so my bad. And what are the techniques we use? Document analysis, financial analysis, item tracking, metrics to key performance indicators, reviews, risk analysis management, and acceptance and evaluation criteria. Who are the stakeholders? Every fucking one. And what are the outputs, basically? Sponsors, primary responsibility, all of them. You literally have to look at every single stakeholder and be like, you know, are you getting what I'm doing here, or are you still clueless? And what are the outputs are basically requirements, validated requirements are, yay, congratulations, now we can use them in defining the architecture. Congratulations, and that's chapter 7.3, my babies. Validated requirements and designs are those that can be demonstrated to deliver benefit to stakeholders and align with the business goals and objectives that change. After reaching this stage, that kind of shows that you know what the fuck you're doing, or where you kind of shows you your position slash direction, and this shows you the gap between where you want to go and where you are. I think amazing, right? If a requirement or design cannot be validated, it either does not benefit the organization, does not fall within the solution scope, or fucking both. Be honest with yourself, man. It's always about that. It's really not just about moving. It's understanding if this move is going to be something that's good for you, positive or not. Love you.